Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is Friday at about 11 o'clock. Hope everyone's doing good. Another spring day here. Pretty calm day. A little bit colder, but yeah, I did a big show yesterday on my favorite television show, and I really don't even look at it as a television show, but I love doing specialty shows, trying to mix things up a little bit. Aside from the coverage of just films that I really love, particularly the exploitation world. And I kind of consider all of these films to be all tied together to a degree because they all have, even True Detective, even though it's a big budget, television show, essentially an HBO original series, and for that matter, one of the first, series that came out that was really successful. I look at it that it's not all that far removed, even though it is kind of a stretch. It's not all that far removed from the elements that I really love about the exploitation world. Meaning that I love, music, I love film, even art, books, whatever it is. I love things that have a real grittiness to them. I like things that are raw. I like hearing, or I like when it comes to say albums, I like it when there's maybe not where there's not always a thing of where the perfect notes are always played, or there you can feel the energy of where they're pushing themselves, and it just has a rawness to it, a grittiness to it, and I feel like True Detective definitely is all about that, the grittiness. It's really raw. So for me, even though it's clearly not like an exploitation movie or show, or really part of the world, to me, there's a lot of similarities with the aesthetic and the delivery. I tend to always love things that are more kind of in your face, a little bit more gritty. They have a sense of realism. I also love things that are very clean and to a degree glossy and very well produced. But I always kind of I always lean back into things that I love, in the art world, or and also in the entertainment world, that always have that always has that kind of that rawness, that raw quality to it. I always feel like, for me, it always resonates with the whole overall world. And for me, that's the number one reason why I love exploitation so much, is because it is an exemplar of that. It totally exemplifies that whole aesthetic. And that's just kind of, naturally where I gravitate towards. It's funny because I always talk about how movies really influenced the weird music I write. For example, Quantum. Really the main thing, the main source, or the main band that I pull from, my love for film. I talked about how I had tried at one point to more or less become a filmmaker, and I kind of threw my hat in the ring. I have some experience as a filmmaker. I use that term really loosely, but I do have a background with shooting video and then eventually a short film, and it was a really great experience. And I never really got back into doing that position again. And over time, I found that when I started my band Quantum, I was able to take those ideas, or that love, or that passion that I got from film, and really dump that into the music. And over time, that's been an incredibly satisfying experience. So it satisfies that part of my brain. So I do it in a different way, but yet I can still do it, if that makes sense. Like one example too, sticking with Quantum for a few minutes, is, as far as like the rawness. Again, I love pop music. I love stuff like the Beatles. I love, contemporary groups like, say, Dojo Cat, which is, to a degree, I also love, like, say, groups like the Beach Boys. To a degree, as pop, something is an example of something that is like as pop as it can be, meaning that it has a real pristine production. It's really clean and it's really polished, but I still love it. But I say, like I said, I always naturally gravitate towards things that just have a, you know, real rawness to it and a real grittiness to it. Um, so case in point, example of that is with Quantum, where our way of how we've recorded albums has really changed over the years for what it's worth. We have, we have about 4 albums out. Our first album that we put out quite a few years ago, which was a self-titled kind of debut, and then the second album we did, Digital Palace, and then after that, The Stars Beneath Our Feet, and then this past year, we put out In Dreams I Saw Chapter 1, and we have the sequel, or part 2 or chapter 2 of that album, kind of waiting in the background for that to be released. And the process of how we've recorded those albums has really changed quite a bit. Initially, Quantum, as far as a studio entity or band, was really a studio experiment. We went in, me and my friend Mike Whitehead, who plays bass in Quantum, and we record all the music at his studio. And, he's a friend I've had for years, and we've had a deep partnership, with different things in music and whatnot. And just, I look to him as a mentor in a lot of ways, but he's a great friend. Initially, we approached this whole thing as like a studio project. So we would go in to the studio, especially the first 2 albums, but especially the first album. We went into the studio without having a plan. There were no like preconceived ideas. We basically went in and ran tape and just experimented with different sounds, different drum grooves, different melodies, different sounds. And we just basically went in and recorded numerous takes of different things. And then after we acquired lots of music, we started sifting through it, and then we started like basically piecemealing things together and created tracks in the studio. And we were, nothing was preconceived. We basically were just trying anything and trying everything and experimenting with all kinds of overdubs and all kinds of things. And it was a really great experience. It was a really hard experience. It was a real huge learning experience for me. And I fell in love with that process. And then by the second album that we did, there were some songs that we had, to a degree, like more on the lines of, or coming more from the space of where they were shells of ideas. But we had I brought some ideas to the studio of some of a plan, like where they resembled a plan of how we wanted to do it. But yet, the majority of that material that we did for the second album, the Digital Palace, was, kind of created in the spot. And it was a big experimentation. And, it was a wonderful experience, both of those albums, and I'm really proud of those albums. And then by that point, we were pretty active as a band. We were performing, and I started writing a lot of material. And one of the problems that I ended up having, which was also a learning thing, was a lot of the material that we recorded in the studio for those first 2 albums, especially the first album, we never did live because they were studio projects. And there, in some ways, a lot of those tunes we couldn't really do live because of the method that we put behind it, with all the numerous overdubs and all these kinds of things. So, but I started writing a lot of material after the first 2 albums. And then quite a few, maybe about 2 or 3 years went by, and we got in the habit of, playing a lot of these songs live, and then also, trying them in different capacities. Like basically seeing how these songs would be live. We would rehearse them and we play them at various gigs. And then over time, they developed to a point of where I was like, oh, okay, like this is something that's feeling it's like it's solidified and it's a song. It's got a real structure to it. It's it's a thing. So and I felt like over time, you know, with how we were approaching playing this material, it felt like each tune was starting to have its own voice and its own identity. So, you know, 3 years went by and we started basically doing things that way. We moved into an area where we were writing more ideas and concepts. We were still improvising and we still do lots of improvising live, but it moved to where it was more song driven, and we basically played this material for about, you know, 3 or 4 years in various, you know, through different live settings and different gigs that we had over the years. So by the time it came for our third album, In Dreams I Saw, I went in with a definite plan of going in and recording the songs. And by the time we went into the studio, there was no like improvising. Everything was really, I think, worked out, fleshed out, and ready to go. So when we went in to record that album, The Stars Beneath Our Feet, it took a lot less time, and it was all song kind of driven. There was no like improvised things going on in the studio, and it was really rehearsed. And I felt like the material was really tight. So we went from, you know, we made this. It was a totally different way and scenario of how we recorded the material, and everything went a lot smoother. And I don't know. I felt after doing that, I felt really, you know, a little bit more confident, but I enjoyed that a lot more, where the focus was more on making the material hopefully as strong as possible. So from that point on, I decided to approach the studio that way, and as far as recording material. And then that's also how we did the last two albums. The one that Chapter 2, this, In Dreams I Saw, which is going to be released at some point. But when we released our last album last year, that was how we recorded it and how we approached it. We were fortunate enough around that time to play lots of gigs, and we rehearsed a lot. So the material was really ready to go. So we went in and recorded things that way. But the reason I feel like it's really the way I record the material, for what it's worth, you know, take it or leave it, you like it or you don't like it, but one of the big influences that I have, or when I say it's really, I'm so influenced by films, you know, with the rawness, that kind of aesthetic, almost that punk rock aesthetic, was we kind of like intentionally went into the studio for the last two albums, or last three albums, I should say, with trying to do things as live as we can and trying to, you know, just kind of run tape and try to go for it. But yet have a good sound, have it really produce really well, hopefully. But the idea was to just keep it really, really raw. I really wanted the music to be really raw. I didn't want to have to do, I got away from the idea of having to do lots of overdubs and you know, and cutting and pasting. I wanted to do it like a punk band would do in the 80s, like just go in and just go for it. And even if there's mistakes, you know, and there's things that go awry, if the energy is there and the feeling is there and the vibe is there, that's really all I want. And that's really what I was trying to achieve. And that to me is a direct influence from the horror, you know, exploitation movies that I really love. And in general, the movies I love, especially in the exploitation world, where those movies were shot, you know, for no money, but they're just really raw. There's not 10,000 different takes. There's not, you know, copious amounts of time done, you know, work done in the editing room. It's just like, you know, like, it's like when I did a podcast last month for Matthew Littlefield, he was asking me on during the show why I love exploitation movies. And I said pretty much, more or less in a sentence, to me, it's like putting on a great or a classic punk rock record. It's just raw and in your face. And that's the same exact approach that I have for recording for Quantum. So that is directly taken from, the world of, the exploitation movies that I really love and that I cherish. So that's just kind of, a combination of that. Or an example of that as being kind of the number one influence, and so it's an interesting process. So today, like I said in the very top of the show, at the very beginning, I try to do these specialty shows. So today is going to be all about The Evil Dead, which I'm really excited to talk about. It's an amazing franchise. There's lots of great movies in the franchise. I've done some videos on different franchises. The biggest and the most, the one I love the most is the Friday 13th series. I did a big series of videos where I covered every movie. I have also I did a series on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I also did a series on the Halloween movies. Huge fan. Oh, I also did a series on the Psycho movies. Evil Dead, for me, is definitely one of the best and also one of the most consistent franchises and one of the most entertaining. And I think especially when it comes to the amazing debut that was directed by, the icon Sam Raimi. That movie was such a game changer. And it's become, to a degree as American as apple pie. It really took horror and the whole like gritty, low budget world of like indie filmmaking and also in exploitation, and put that in all of the American households across the country. It's become part of our fabric, and it really elevated what independent filmmakers were able to do and can do, and it just elevated the entire genre of horror, which is the greatest genre around. And the reason I'm wanted to do this show, I'm going to try to talk about all of the movies in the show. So this might be a little bit of a longer video, but I'm going to try to talk a little bit about all the movies in the franchise, as well as Ash, the television show, which is really awesome. The reason I wanted to do this was a few months ago, or a little less, really less than a few months ago, it was announced that there's going to be a new Evil Dead movie that's coming out, and it's called Evil Dead Rise, and it's coming out next month. And I'm very excited to see it. I saw the trailer for it a couple of weeks ago, and it looks pretty spectacular. Different director, Bruce Campbell, I believe, who is Ash, the lead role in this glorious franchise. I believe Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi acted as producers for this newer film. And I believe they're very, very much involved with this movie, or were involved in it. Judging from the trailer, it looked spectacular. So I'm really excited to see it. I pretty much love everything that's attached to the universe of Evil Dead. I have numerous copies of the movies. There's a few I don't own that I need to get. And this is a little bit of a sample of some of the stuff I have here. I have a really awesome edition of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 on Blu-ray. This is a combo pack. Combo packs I'm not usually a big fan of. And it's a Blu-ray edition. I'm not a big fan of combo packs. I have quite a few. The reason is because I'm a big, film fanatic, and I'm a super nerd, and I love one of the things that I see with a lot of combo packs is the quality of a lot of the movies that you can get on those on the, in that format or in on this format is really good a lot of the times. Like you can get some great Blu-ray quality videos or versions of the film, even 4K. But a lot of the times they don't have any special features. So that's one reason I tend to not buy combo packs. I'll buy box sets because box sets tend to have all of those special features that you want as a fan. But when it comes to like a one disc, kind of thing of where it has like 5 movies on it, it's a good financially it's a good way to go. But a lot of the times they don't come with special features. So a lot of the times when what I'll do if it's a group of movies or maybe a film or a series of movies that I love by a particular director, I will usually buy them individually because they typically will have loads of special features about those movies. One great example of that is one of my favorite directors of all time, Herschel Gordon Lewis. There's numerous box sets of his films out there where there's like I saw one little box set which is more of a more along this line. It's not really a box set per se, but it's like 3 or 4 discs and it has like 50 movies or something on it. It's just crazy. But I noticed they don't really have and there's a bunch of different editions of his collections of his films. But I notice a lot of the times there's like zero there's like a 0% thing of special features. There's no extra bonus things. So what I tend to do instead, and what I've done when it comes to Herschel Gordon Lewis, is I bought all of his movies individually, and they all come with like an immense amount of special features. So that's where it's at. But this one is kind of an exception. This combo pack is an exception. I got this. I think I got this a couple of years ago from Santa Claus, and it has Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, the sequel, all on Blu-ray. But it's packed with special features. It's really this is probably my favorite thing that I own as when it comes to Evil Dead as far as Blu-rays, because it has hours of bonus features on here. It's really, really good. And it's got both movies, and the quality is pretty phenomenal. This is also and this one is one of the first editions of Evil Dead that I have, and this is the original, and this is a DVD version of it, and it's pretty decent. The transfer is pretty good. I mean, it's DVD. It's pretty decent. It's got some special features on here, but it's pretty tiny and pretty minuscule compared to the combo pack. But this is one of the first ones. I have about 3 other versions of Evil Dead. I have it on DVD. Couple of copies that I have is just literally the standard version of the movie. There's no special features. I don't even think there's like commentary on it. And it's I think they're at least in letterbox format, but pretty standard. But I have numerous copies of it. But this one's okay. This one's pretty good. I'm glad I own it. And then this is another DVD copy of Evil Dead that I have that's actually pretty good. It's a remastered version. It's DVD, but it's actually like a high definition quality of the movie. And it's actually better than the last one that I just showed. But it still suffers in the department where there's no special features. But this is a pretty cool edition. But it's pretty decent. It's pretty decent. And, I'll always hold on to it. And then I have the Evil Dead remake that came out, which was the last one in the franchise, which is, I think this movie is one of the best examples, one of the best remakes. Even though it's not really a remake, it's very different, and it's its own thing. But this is an awesome, awesome movie. Really, really great. One of the best in the franchise. And the other ones that I own, I'm not going to show because they're kind of all the same thing. But I have about 3 three or four other copies of Evil Dead on DVD, and they're all pretty standard. But for me, Evil Dead, I mean, geez, it's such a, it was such a part of my childhood. And it's funny because the second one, Evil Dead 2, was the one that I saw the first. And I remember as a kid, totally unaware that Evil Dead 2 is essentially a remake of the original. And I used to watch the second one all the time. It used to be on cable. I used to get it as a kid on VHS. My mom is a huge fan of the Evil Dead series. We used to watch it together like all the time. So many great memories, tied in with this movie and this franchise. And it wasn't until like probably when I was in high school was when I realized, oh wait, this is actually a remake. And then I fell in love with the original, and that it still like today remains my favorite of the entire franchise. Even though Evil Dead 2 is great, but it's just there's something about the first one that again it goes back to the rawness factor. It's so raw and it's so gory and it's so in your face and it just feels like Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and all of the other creative forces behind that movie were just going for the jugular. They were just going for it, and it's such an intense, fun experience. And that since that time, it still remains my favorite film in the franchise. I just love it. And actually, the remake, even though it's very different, and I almost don't consider a remake, reminds me of the original quite a bit because it has that rawness and it's super gory. It's very in your face. There's certain things about it that really do remind me of the original. And of course, the original Evil Dead came out in 1981, starring Bruce Campbell, Alan Soundweiss, Hal Dietrich, Betsy Baker, written and directed by Sam Raimi. Primetime example of how an independent filmmaker can make a mark, and where these guys had nothing, and they were essentially friends. Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi were childhood friends. They always had an obsession for movies. They spent years and years together making home movies, and then they eventually got their own thing financed. And after that, it went on to change history, movie history forever, and has become easily one of the most influential movies in the horror genre. And I feel, even to more of a serious degree, was one of those movies that went on to really inspire independent filmmakers. That wow, like you can, if you have an abundance of imagination and creativity, you can do anything. And that movie, I think, really, the first Evil Dead really opened up the floodgates to that. Went on to inspire so many filmmakers and to be able to take that chance and take that risk, and work outside of the industry, the quote unquote Hollywood industry, and that these independent voices do really have something to say. And so Sam Raimi has that legacy, and he's obviously gone on to become huge director, and he's directed so many great movies. One movie that he directed, which I really love, and it's something I'm going to review, A Simple Plan, with Billy Bob Thornton and Bill Paxton. Such an incredible movie. I think super underrated. He also directed Spider-Man, which with Tobey Maguire, all three movies, but the first one being just an amazing movie. The first two, and Sam Raimi's his career is propelled to where he's like a household name. Just so many great movies. And, again, somebody who started from nothing. I mean, just an incredible legacy that he started and that he created. Um, so iconic. And Evil Dead 2, which was the sequel, which was the first one I saw in the series, came out in 1987. That's such a great film, too. That's such an awesome film. You can tell when you watch both films that the second one was obviously a remake and they had a little bit of a bigger budget. It's not quite as gory. It's funny because one thing I noticed, with the exception of the remake, and also Ash, which I think definitely delivers the goods as far as the gore factor. But I've noticed over the years that each film has a little bit of the gore factor is a little bit turned down to a degree. They get more and more. Each film gets more and more comical and a little bit more silly and campy, but they're still just amazing. They still have the essence of the story and the great characters. And Bruce Campbell is just so iconic and so amazing. I had a friend, my friend Sean Russell, who I've talked about, and he was actually a guest on the show. He went to a big horror convention a couple of years ago, and Bruce Campbell was this one of the guests, and he got to see him talk, and I think he got to meet him and stuff. And Bruce Campbell's just a legendary actor, and especially in the world of horror. I mean, he's just amazing. Everything he's in is just spectacular. I did a movie called Maniac Cop, which I love that movie to death. Awesome movie, and he was in that. Pretty underrated movie. I feel like that movie. The movie itself is really well known, but I think a lot of people seem to forget that Bruce Campbell was in that, and it was one of his first roles. But I love that movie to death, and he is one of the reasons that movie is so damn good. And like I said, the track record of Sam Raimi, I mean, just pretty amazing, pretty consistent. And the last movie he did, which I have not seen, I heard is actually not that great, was the last Doctor Strange movie that came out last year, which I haven't seen. But he went from being this guerrilla filmmaker, working with no budgets, to essentially working for Marvel and becoming one of the biggest commercial directors in the world. And I think for the most part, he still has, like, you still see his roots on the screen. Like, he still has that fire for the most part in all of his films, even though the budgets have gotten bigger over the years. Army of Darkness, another movie, the third film in the franchise. Just an iconic movie. Probably the most comical or silly film of the franchise. I almost think of that as more of a fantasy film than a horror film. But I love that movie to death. It's so over the top and so ridiculous. It's the stop motion is just incredible. Drag Me to Hell was another film that Sam Raimi did. It's actually rated PG, but it's actually really good. It's actually a really great movie. Darkman, 1980, awesome, another awesome movie. The Quick and the Dead, which is a western that he directed, starring Sharon Stone and Leonardo DiCaprio, which is a great movie. And another movie he did with Kate Blanchett and Keanu Reeves, The Gift, in 2000, which is a supernatural kind of ghost story movie. Really great movie. Really awesome movie. And then there's also Crime Wave, which is a movie he did in 1985, which was the biggest commercial or the biggest flop of his entire career. I've never seen Crime Wave. And he directed it right after Evil Dead, and this was going to be like his big hit, and it was a total commercial failure. I've never seen it, and it's something I need to see at some point. And Sam Raimi's also acted as a producer on a lot of horror films. But his track record as a director is pretty solid. I mean, he's made some really great films. Um, and the only film I don't own Army of Darkness, which I need to buy because, I think that movie, like even though that film is obviously more of a campier, it's pretty campy. It's really schlocky. I kind of feel it's almost more of a B movie to a degree, and it's a little bit less gory, but it's visually it's amazing, and it's such a fun and entertaining movie. I don't know why I don't own that yet. I need to get that on Blu-ray. That would be super spectacular. Um, it's again visually it's an astounding movie. It definitely has just an incredible amount of fun and joy, and it's so incredibly over the top. And I think it really harkens back to certain films. Like I was saying, the that film, Army of Darkness, I feel is like a. I always look at that movie as being kind of Sam Raimi's tribute to the great films of Ray Harryhausen, who was a stop animation artist in the 70s, 80s, even in the 60s. So many great movies that he made. A legend, Ray Harryhausen. So many amazing movies that he directed, with the use of the technology that he created. Um, just amazing. All of the amazing model work that he created. Clash of the Titans being the original one, or not the original one, but one of the greatest. He did the effects on the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms in 1953. The Foghorn. So many great films. Sinbad. The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad in 1958. A legend in the world of cinema. And I've always felt that the Army of Darkness is like kind of a love letter to that lost art form that Ray Harryhausen created. You don't really see that anymore, and he was a genius. And I feel like that movie really pays tribute to that kind of lost style and that really unique way to 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 show various mythologies on the big screen, and just the love, and you see all the love and the passion put into uh, the application of creating these monsters. Just amazing. And I'm going to do a show on Harryhausen at some point. I'm a huge fan. He's a huge figure in my life growing up as a kid. I have a few of his movies on Blu-ray. Amazing. And then there was also the TV series that they did, starring Bruce Campbell, called Ash, which actually is a really great series. And I think they did such a fantastic job with keeping the essence of the trilogy and what Sam Raimi created in the original. Just a super entertaining show, super gory, super entertaining. Definitely one of the best horror series that's ever been out. Ash first. It was called Ash vs. the Evil Dead, and it came out in 2015. Just killer. It was produced by Stars Network. Just so awesome, and Sam Raimi's name's all over it. And again, a great continuation of the story that was and the franchise that Sam Raimi created. Super awesome. I remember finishing. I watched that a few years ago and just totally fell in love with it. And it's something that I need to buy at some point on Blu-ray. And then that leads me to the the remake or the last one that came out, Evil Dead. And I don't really look at this as a remake per se. I I kind of feel like this movie it definitely pays tribute and pays homage and it's a tipping of the hat to what Sam Raimi created. But it's really different, and I love how it has that tie-in to the Evil Dead universe, but it's so unique and it's so original. And yet, like I said before, it really does remind me of the first Evil Dead because it has a real grittiness to it. And it's super raw. It's super gory. It's definitely out of all of the movies, I would say it's probably the most gory. And, to a degree, I almost think it's more of a horror movie. It's a little bit more it doesn't really have the campiness, which I love from the whole all of these movies. It doesn't have the silliness. So the tone of it is way more serious for this remake. But it's so damn good. It's definitely an example of one of the greatest. Like technically, it's a remake, and even though I don't really think of it, I think of it as a standalone film. Technically, it's a remake, but it is truly a standalone film. I think you could watch this without being familiar with the franchise. Without seeing any of the movies or the TV show. It's just so damn good. Um, and it was directed by Fede Alvarez, who's a pretty amazing director. He's done some really great films, and he's been around for quite a few years now. Fede Alvarez directed this other movie that I think is just such an awesome movie called Don't Breathe, which came out in 2016. Super killer movie. Just an awesome movie. I don't own it. It's something I need to get, and I definitely want to review it. Really, really great movie. And I believe, which I've heard a lot of mixed things about it, but he did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake that came out last year, which I heard isn't so great, but he's definitely just based on these two films, based on this Evil Dead remake, and then also Don't Breathe. They're both such outstanding movies that I look at him as being, you know, a force to be reckoned with as far as being a director and especially a director in horror. Just incredible. And so I'm really excited to see what this new Evil Dead movie will be like. I'm not sure. Trying to stay away from it. Trying to stay away from it. I want to go see it cold. I did see the trailer. I thought the trailer was really good. One of the problems that trailers have these days is that they basically give away the entire movie, which is a terrible thing, and I think studios are starting to feel the backlash of that because there's been a slew of movies that have been coming out that have not been making a whole lot of money, and I realize it's really attributed to the marketing, but a lot of these trailers are trying to just give away that they give away the whole kind of plot and what the movie is going to be about. And I thought one of the strengths of this new trailer that I saw for the new Evil Dead movie, it's called Evil Dead Rise, was that it just gave you enough to keep you really interested, and it looked really incredible. But yet I'm not really sure what it's about, and I don't know how it's going to end. You see that in trailers all the time now. So I remember watching the trailer kind of reluctantly because I didn't want to know anything about it. But I'm really excited to see it. that's the only movie I can think of right now that I'm like super excited to see. So we'll see, and I'm gonna try to stay away from it. Trying to stay away from any info around it so I can go and see it cold. So, but overall, huge fan of Sam Raimi. Huge fan of this entire franchise. Again, my favorite being the very first one from 1981. You know, it's such an iconic movie. I really love Army of Darkness too, just because, like I said, of those reasons. And I really think the remake that came out a few years back is just an amazing movie too. Those are probably my favorite. I love all of them. Ash vs. Evil Dead is great too. It's a great. The whole universe is great, and there's lots of you know lots of entertainment to be had. So definitely check out if you're looking to explore a franchise. But this is a really well known franchise. There's probably a lot of people out there that have already seen this, but it's worth, if you haven't or have seen, or if you haven't seen this the TV series or some of the other films, it's really worth the time. And if you're a fan of horror, just totally delivers the goods. And for the most part, Sam Raimi's track record is pretty awesome. So, you know, he's an icon. So, yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. And also him. And as far as Bruce Campbell. So this is Jason Dean. So thanks again for your support. If you like this channel, please subscribe to it and keep the comments coming. And have a great day. Peace.